In the 21st century, global power is shifting not just across oceans, but across continents. And the new frontier of competition isn't Europe or even the Indo-Pacific, it's Africa. For decades, the world viewed Africa through the lens of aid, poverty, and instability. But today, Africa is rising. Economically, demographically, strategically. It is no longer a passive recipient of global policy. It is the arena where great powers project their influence, build alliances, and secure resources for the future. Two Asian giants, India and China, stand at the center of this contest. Each sees Africa not only as a market or partner, but as a vital pillar of its long-term strategy. China, with its massive financial muscle and the Belt and Road Initiative, has already planted deep roots across the continent. India, meanwhile, is playing a quieter but more sustainable game, one built on partnership, people, and pragmatism. Today on Strategic Vanguard, we explore why Africa has become the new frontline in the India-China rivalry, and how this contest could shape the world's balance of power in the decades to come.
Before we move forward, please like, share, and subscribe Strategic Vanguard and be up to date with the latest news and happenings from the world of defense, strategic, and international affairs. Tune into our video channels in YouTube and Rumble. And if you want to hear the audio version, tune into our Strategic Vanguard channels in Spotify and Amazon Music.
Africa's importance in world affairs has never been greater. It is home to nearly 1.4 billion people, a number expected to double by 2050. By mid-century, 1 in every 4 people on Earth will be African. Its cities, Lagos, Nairobi, Addis Ababa, Dar es Salaam, are expanding at astonishing rates. But Africa's value is not just demographic, it's geographic. The continent straddles key maritime arteries, the Suez Canal to the north, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Gulf of Aden to the east, and the Cape of Good Hope to the south. Whoever builds influence across Africa gains access to these global choke points, routes that carry much of the world's trade and energy supplies. Economically, Africa holds 30% of the planet's mineral reserves: gold, platinum, rare earths, cobalt, and lithium, the critical materials of the 21st century industrial revolution. Its arable land is vast, its energy potential enormous. Diplomatically, Africa's 54 countries command weight in the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and now in the G20, where the African Union recently gained permanent membership. Control or cooperation with Africa isn't just about economics. It's about legitimacy in the emerging global order. For both India and China, Africa represents opportunity, resources, and influence rolled into one strategic arena. China's engagement with Africa has been relentless and strategic. Starting in the early 2000s, Beijing identified Africa as a key pillar of its going-out strategy, exporting surplus capital, technology, and manpower abroad. This accelerated under Xi Jinping through the Belt and Road Initiative, which turned African nations into partners, and in many cases, debtors. Over 2 decades, Chinese banks and state-owned enterprises financed more than $75 billion in African infrastructure. Ports, railways, highways, power plants, and digital networks, all built with Chinese loans, often using Chinese contractors and workers. Kenya's standard gauge railway, connecting Mombasa to Nairobi, became a flagship project, but also a warning. Costs ballooned, transparency faded, and debt soared. By 2023, Kenya was spending more than half of its tax revenue on debt repayment, much of it owed to China. Across Africa, similar patterns emerged. Zambia defaulting under the weight of Chinese loans, Ethiopia renegotiating terms, and local populations protesting lack of jobs and opaque contracts. Yet China's approach is not purely economic, it's strategic. In Djibouti, Beijing established its first overseas military base, directly astride the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Chinese companies now operate ports from the Red Sea to the Atlantic. These facilities not only support trade, but potentially extend the reach of the People's Liberation Army Navy. China's influence also extends into the digital domain. Through companies like Huawei and ZTE, it has built Africa's communication backbones, 5G networks, surveillance systems, and data centers. This gives Beijing long-term leverage over Africa's information infrastructure. To consolidate soft power, China launched cultural programs, Confucius Institutes, scholarships, media exchanges, and even propaganda partnerships with local broadcasters. Yet, despite the vast spending, its image has started to face backlash. Africans increasingly question whether Chinese engagement benefits local development or primarily serves Beijing's ambitions. China's Africa strategy is defined by scale and speed, but also by dependency and control. It delivers tangible infrastructure, but risks alienating partners through debt and dominance. India's engagement with Africa follows a very different trajectory. Where China builds grand projects, India builds relationships. India's historical connections with Africa date back centuries, through trade across the Indian Ocean and through the shared struggle against colonialism. Mahatma Gandhi began his political life in South Africa. The non-aligned movement bound India with newly independent African nations during the Cold War. Millions of people of Indian origin still live across East and Southern Africa, in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and South Africa, forming a bridge of culture and commerce. Today, India's presence in Africa focuses on three key pillars: development partnership, trade, and capacity building. Through the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, New Delhi provides scholarships and training to thousands of African professionals every year. India has extended over $13 billion in lines of credit to build projects in energy, railways, agriculture, and healthcare, without creating unsustainable debt. Unlike China's top-down model, India's approach is demand-driven. African governments propose projects, India finances and executes them through transparent, concessional terms. In the private sector, Indian companies are major players in pharmaceuticals, information technology, and manufacturing. From Bharti Airtel's telecom networks to Tata's automotive operations and ONGC Videsh's energy exploration, India's investment footprint is wide. Culturally, India's soft power runs deep. Bollywood films, Indian food, and yoga have become part of African popular culture. Indian doctors, teachers, and entrepreneurs work alongside local communities, building goodwill that no infrastructure loan can buy. At the strategic level, India has intensified its maritime and defense engagement. The India-Africa Defense Dialogue and the Indo-Africa Maritime Summit are now regular fixtures. Indian naval ships frequently visit African ports, conducting joint exercises and training missions. In essence, India's Africa strategy is not about dominance, it's about partnership. It may lack China's financial magnitude, but it gains legitimacy through trust, shared values, and mutual benefit. The contest between India and China in Africa unfolds across 5 interconnected arenas: trade, resources, infrastructure, security, and diplomacy. First, trade and investment. China remains Africa's largest trading partner, with bilateral trade surpassing $250 billion in 2023. India ranks second, trading roughly $100 billion. But the growth rate tells another story. While China's trade with Africa has plateaued, India's has expanded rapidly, especially with East African nations like Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique. Second, resources and energy security. Africa's oil, gas, and minerals are lifelines for both economies. China's state-owned giants have long secured mining concessions in Zambia, the DRC, and Angola. India, meanwhile, seeks stable access to crude and critical minerals, using joint ventures and private investment rather than state monopolies. Third, infrastructure and technology. China dominates large physical infrastructure, railways, ports, dams, while India focuses on digital infrastructure, education, and health. Indian IT firms help digitize African banking and governance systems, while its pharmaceutical industry supplies affordable medicines across the continent. Fourth, maritime security. China's naval presence in the Indian Ocean, anchored at Djibouti and strengthened by port access in East Africa, has strategic implications. India responds by deepening defense ties with African coastal states, providing training, equipment, and joint patrols against piracy. The aim, ensure that the Western Indian Ocean remains a zone of open navigation, not Chinese dominance. Fifth, diplomacy and soft power. Here, India's democratic ethos and non-interference policy give it an edge. New Delhi presents itself as a partner of equals, part of the global South family, while Beijing is often seen as a creditor seeking control. In the race for African hearts and minds, infrastructure alone cannot win the contest. It's the power of perception, who is seen as a genuine partner, that will decide the outcome. In Kenya, the contrast between the two models is striking. China built the standard gauge railway, a multi-billion-dollar line linking Mombasa to Nairobi. Initially hailed as a success story, it soon became controversial. Ticket prices soared, freight volumes lagged, and the debt burden strained the economy. Local Kenyans protested what they called Chinese colonialism through debt. India's approach in Kenya has been quieter but more durable. Indian pharmaceutical companies dominate the health sector, providing affordable generics. Bharti Airtel competes head-to-head with Chinese tech firms. Indian engineering consultancies have worked on smaller but high-impact projects, roads, power distribution, and IT connectivity. In Tanzania, Chinese investment remains strong in ports and construction, yet Indian businesses have built solid ground through education, medicine, and micro-industry. The human connection gives India staying power, where China's top-down projects often fade.
Before we move forward, please like, share, and subscribe Strategic Vanguard and be up to date with the latest news and happenings from the world of defense, strategic, and international affairs. Tune into our video channels in YouTube and Rumble. And if you want to hear the audio version, tune into our Strategic Vanguard channels in Spotify and Amazon Music.
Nigeria is Africa's largest economy and most populous country. It is the ultimate prize. China's engagement here is massive. Billions in loans, railways, and power projects. But delays, corruption scandals, and debt worries have tarnished its image. India's relationship with Nigeria is older and more organic. The Indian High Commission opened in Lagos in 1958, even before Nigeria's independence. Trade between the two countries now exceeds $15 billion annually, driven by petroleum imports, pharmaceuticals, and engineering goods. India supplies a large portion of Nigeria's essential medicines, and hundreds of Nigerian students study in Indian universities each year. This creates networks of influence that last beyond any single government contract. Nigeria shows a pattern repeated across the continent. China builds faster, but India builds deeper. From Africa's viewpoint, the competition between India and China is both a blessing and a dilemma. The blessing lies in choice. For the first time in history, African states can diversify partners. They can negotiate better terms, attract multiple investors, and reduce dependence on any single power. The dilemma lies in balance. Debt from Chinese loans has strained national budgets. Some countries like Zambia have defaulted, others have had to renegotiate terms. Meanwhile, India's more modest funding can appear limited in scale. African leaders increasingly weigh not only the money, but the model. Who offers technology transfer, local employment, and respect for sovereignty? Who delivers growth without strings attached? Public opinion reflects this shift. Across East and Southern Africa, surveys show rising skepticism toward China's intentions and growing appreciation for India's cooperative stance. In the long term, Africa's agency will define the rivalry's outcome. If African nations use competition to their advantage, they can drive both powers to deliver real development rather than dependency. Africa's eastern coastline is where India and China's strategic interests collide most visibly. The Indian Ocean is the lifeline of Asia. Nearly 80% of China's oil imports pass through it, and many of those routes hug the African coast. For Beijing, securing maritime access points in Africa, like Djibouti, Mombasa, and Dar es Salaam, is essential to its string of pearls strategy, ensuring the safe flow of energy from the Gulf region. For India, the same ocean is its strategic backyard. Any foreign military foothold along Africa's eastern seaboard poses a potential challenge to India's maritime dominance. In response, New Delhi has intensified its naval diplomacy. Indian warships make regular goodwill visits to African ports, offering training and humanitarian aid. Joint exercises such as AMEX bring together African navies and the Indian Navy under a common agenda, keeping the Indian Ocean open and stable. India's investments in ports like Chabahar in Iran and partnerships with island nations like the Seychelles and Mauritius further strengthen its western maritime flank, effectively linking the Indian subcontinent with Africa's eastern rim. This maritime dimension elevates the India-China contest from economics to grand strategy. Control of sea lanes, ports, and logistics hubs could determine who truly commands the Indo-Pacific century. As Africa's global profile grows, the India-China rivalry will intensify, but not in the same way it has played out in Asia. Three possible futures stand out. Scenario 1. India's gradual rise. India's partnership-based model gains traction as African nations tire of Chinese debt. Indian trade expands through private sector innovation, technology, and education. Over time, Africa becomes a cornerstone of India's global South diplomacy and a stable maritime partner in the Indian Ocean. Scenario 2. China retains dominance. Despite debt problems, Beijing restructures loans, doubles down on BRI 2.0, and maintains its lead through sheer scale. African elites, reliant on Chinese funding, keep the dragon entrenched, though public sentiment remains wary. Scenario 3. A multipolar Africa. Neither India nor China dominates. The United States, the EU, Japan, and Gulf powers re-enter the fray, offering alternatives. Africa leverages this competition to secure the best deals. This is the most likely path, a complex equilibrium where influence is shared, not monopolized. For India, the window of opportunity is now. As China's momentum slows, New Delhi can expand its footprint through sustained engagement, economic, diplomatic, and naval. Africa fits naturally into India's Indo-Pacific vision, linking South Asia to the Western Hemisphere through trade and connectivity. If India plays its cards right, it can become Africa's partner of choice, trusted, respected, and enduring. The story of Africa's rise is also the story of Asia's expansion. The elephant and the dragon have both crossed the Indian Ocean, each seeking influence in a continent that mirrors their own past. Emerging, ambitious, and full of promise. China arrived early, with grand visions and deep pockets. India arrived later, with quiet confidence and people-to-people warmth. One built skylines, the other built trust. The outcome of this rivalry will not be decided by ports or railways alone. It will be determined by which nation earns Africa's respect and empowers its growth without compromising its sovereignty. For Africa, this is not a new scramble, it is a test of agency. For India, it is an opportunity to project a different model of power, rooted in partnership, not patronage. And for China, it is a reminder that influence built on debt can fade as quickly as it rises. As the world tilts toward multipolarity, Africa is no longer the periphery, it is the center. And the contest between India and China on this continent will shape not just the future of Africa, but the future of Asia, and indeed, the future of the global South. I'm Manoj Ambat, and this is Strategic Vanguard. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into defense, strategy, and global affairs from an Indian perspective.
Thank you for joining us on this Strategic Vanguard deep dive. If you found value in this analysis, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We bring you fresh deep dives every Wednesday and Saturday here on YouTube and Rumble, and you can also catch the audio versions on Spotify and Amazon Music. Just search for Strategic Vanguard Deep Dive. For more insights, articles, and discussions, Subscribe to our blog at strategicvanguard.com. Your support helps us grow and bring you more in-depth analysis on defense, geopolitics, and strategy. Until next time, stay informed, stay strategic.